Many people ask me why Ukrainians have such strong feelings towards Russians, and I think I'm in a good position to explain because I grew up in the south of Ukraine, one of the regions that Russians like to claim as Russian speaking. And yeah, I grew up there. My father is a prominent journalist there, and I stay very much plugged in to the day to day because, for example, every night there are several waves of missile and suicide drone attacks on the city. And it is done not only to destroy civilian infrastructure and at random hit at civilian houses, it is also used as a terror tactic to deprive people of sleep. And it's very effective, as you may guess. For example, my 11-year-old brother, he, I don't think, had a full night's sleep ever since he decided with mom to go back to Ukraine to reunite with our dad and the grandparents and the community. And just so you know, for my brother, who is 11 years old, as I said, in his life, there's been exactly half a year when there wasn't a war, when every day we didn't have news 1, 2, 3, 500 Ukrainians have died today on the front line. And the fact that you didn't notice this war since 2014 till 2022, it doesn't mean that it stopped, or that even one day during the rule of President Donald Trump there wasn't a war with Russia. So when he says that Russia was at bay during his first admin, that's not exactly true. At any rate, Russians, basically, the way I see it and the way tens of millions of people, Ukrainians, see it, Ukraine has been brutally occupied for 70 years by Russians. They called it Soviet Union, but in reality it was a slightly smaller Russian empire. Basically, Russia has been falling apart for several centuries now, and every time they manage to convince people that this time it's impossible and that it's too big to fail. Well, I think Americans know a thing or two about too big to fail. And funnily enough, your president right now is doing a bailout similar to how Obama did for bankers. But your president is doing it for President Putin. Well, so 70 years of brutal occupation, and yeah, exactly 100 years ago there was the same war, 1917, 1921. Ukrainians were fighting for survival against Russians, but they managed to overcome us in 4 years, and in the next 10 years they have carried out a genocide of Ukrainian people. Basically, it wasn't just starving whole regions surrounding them with soldiers, taking away every single piece of grain or corn from a village and then waiting until everybody dies. It wasn't just that. It was also direct and brute force persecutions of all writers, musicians, sculptors, architects, anybody who basically had a high school education was in danger, which I think they still are in Russia. Yeah, and basically, in my opinion, again, Russia should be divided in like 15 more countries. Soviet Union fell apart into what, 17, and let's do more. Let's keep it going. It's, you know, they try to position it as if they're winning anything. In reality, they're losing their sphere of influence by the minute. Like 100 years ago, they seriously, with serious faces, claimed that Polish and Finnish people were Russians. It's like, you know, you can't make this shit up, but that's where we are. And yeah, so brutal occupation, genocide. Google Holodomor, HOLODO MOR, so Holodomor. And yeah, just check out those pictures and you will get the idea. So basically, if you think that this conflict, the way American media likes to frame it, started in 2022, you are wrong. If you think that it started in 2014, unfortunately you're wrong too. And basically, the war on the West started in 2007 with the Putin Munich speech, and the war on Ukraine has started in the 90s when they tried to occupy Crimea with the military force by building, basically by reaching Crimea with one pinky and like say, oh, that's mine now. And then they were told like, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, nothing, it's fine, because they were weaker then. And so the goal is to make them weak again. And that's what every conscious human being on Earth should be pursuing. You know, at any, just by making fun of them at least. Because that's what they're afraid of most. So yeah, and then after 70 years of occupation and genocide, Ukrainians basically were beaten into submission and basically conformed and fit into this gray wall that is like communism, which again, communism was just a guise for Russian imperialism, and Russian imperialism comes from hundreds of years of occupation of this land by you know, by Mongolian hordes. And that's all right. It's just, let's not pretend that this is some traditional Christian land. Just look at the helmet of their what's his name, Alexander Nevsky. He was basically a Mongol or Osman, Mongol, local bandit who Mongols put to control the population and collect the taxes. And his most famous battle against like 30 Teuton knights. Yeah, basically it's not even proven that it happened, and that's their biggest kind of propaganda star. And you know, the symbols on his helmet, they're not Christian. Well, let's go further. Ukrainians were compliant for the most of it. The Second World War ended in 45, but Ukrainians continued to fight Russians in western parts of Ukraine, and even southern parts of Ukraine, and all over, to be honest, till the middle of the 50s. So 10 more years these people were fighting, and it was only possible because everybody was on their side. Like, people understood, hey, we're under occupation, these people are trying to destroy our identity, they're burning our like artifacts, they're robbing us, they're taking all of our property. Russians aren't our friends, but we are under occupation, and we're supporting our guys who are trying to fight. So and then when even that movement was subdued and all of its leaders were killed all over the world, it continued, like writers continued to write books, musicians continued to create, new generations would be born, and of course we will never see what some of like hundreds of geniuses were capable of, because they were just executed point blank for, for writing a poem that is not that is very complimentary to Tavarish Stalin, but it's not complimentary enough, and we suspect that you have some nationalist leanings just because you speak Ukrainian on the street, which is a good answer to the question of why Ukrainians speak Russian better than Russians. It's because if you spoke Ukrainian in the street, for example, in my hometown, when for as long as I lived there, it was kind of weird to speak Ukrainian anywhere but at home. It even felt kind of dangerous, like, why am I provoking these people? Because Russian-speaking people, they would be like, "Hey, what are you like? Are you a nationalist or something? Why are you pretending? What are you doing?" Even though all those people would speak Ukrainian at home, or at least to their grandparents. And this is just the influence that an empire has on a population if it controls it for several generations. It's sad, it's tragic, and I think Ukraine is showing like unbelievable resilience, and the nation that withstood pressure from Soviet Union, the biggest pressure from Soviet Union, and then was able to rally and in 30 years basically solve most of the issues of forming a democratic society. There is oligarchs, there is some like media that belongs either to the government or the oligarchs there, and USAID, by the way, was funding so many free media and like investigative journalists, which would investigate for the US, for basically, and for the Ukrainian people, like, hey, what is Zelensky's bureaucrats doing wrong? Like we may think Zelensky is a good guy, and I think he is, but like, yeah, his bureaucrats may be bad, and there are Russian agents there, and we need watchdogs, and journalists are those watchdogs, and their lifeline was cut. Now they're gathering donations. If you can find it in your heart, let me know, and I'll tell you what publications are worth it. Yeah, so and even since so basically since independence was reclaimed by Ukraine, it was under constant unbelievable pressure, but from Russian soft power. It used its position as the stronger older brother, which basically meant you shouldn't say anything that your older brother doesn't want to hear, because you know what's gonna happen. And basically, after beating the Ukrainian identity into pulp for 70 years straight, and to be honest, 350 years straight, because that's how long Ukraine has been under, subject to Russia, unfortunately, in the Russian sphere of influence, which cost us, I think, tens of millions of lives. And who knows how different World War II would have gone if Ukraine was helped in its struggle against Russia in 1920s, because then Stalin wouldn't have been able to attack Poland with fascists from Ukrainian territory, and using Ukrainian resources. So when you abandon Ukraine, you make your arch nemesis in Russia a lot stronger. Last century you did it. It worked out very bad, and it took like very big effort during the Cold War to reverse, at least partly, what you did. And I hope that this time around Americans won't make the same mistakes. I have no hatred in my heart for Russians who are not in Russia now. and so do most Ukrainians. It's okay as long as you're not in there working for the regime, feeding them, clothing them, donating to them, like healing them, or just supporting them, or just doing your part to keep the Russian government in power. And therefore Russian missiles and Russian drones with payloads of hundreds of pounds of explosives they head towards peaceful Ukrainian cities. As long as my brother has to wake up every night to the sounds of the sirens, like it's Britain during the Blitz, I won't have any empathy for anything that is going on in Russia, any. And to me, it's as if it's a can of worms, but worms which are poisonous and venomous at the same time. And for all I care, pour benzene over their oil and gas and just burn it all down, and let's start from scratch. This land has been a swamp before. Maybe it needs to become a swamp again and then get redeveloped like Gaza in Trump's dreams, right? So that was your intro to why Ukrainians hate Russians. I hope I was not too boring, and I hope you learned something. Do let me know any questions about Ukrainian history, Ukrainian identity, and the life of Ukraine during the war. I'll be happy to answer.